Good evening. Did you read whatever we finished? Read and came. What did we finish till last class? Process of digestion is over.
Yes.
Did we start with respiration?
No.
No.
Protein digestion takes place only in acidic medium.
Protein.
Digestion takes place only in acidic medium.
Protein digestion initiates in the acidic medium. To start, it needs an acidic medium. But it cannot take place in a very alkaline medium also. So when we are talking about the rest of the steps of protein digestion takes place in the jejunum, duodenum, jejunum, which is slightly alkaline. But to initiate the process, it requires an acidic medium always. It cannot start in an alkaline medium like the carbohydrate and fats. Okay. Absorption we have discussed.
Yes.
What is absorption we discussed? So absorption, assimilation, with this we complete the process of digestion. Show me what did we do the last class? What was absorption? What was the definition of absorption? Did I give you one question on that? What is absorption? Did we write anything on absorption, check? No? After the process of digestion is over, you are supposed to know what are some of the terms. As we summarize, wind up with the concept of nutrition, you should know that nutrition, referring to the concept of nutrition, the first is ingestion. What is ingestion? The process of taking in of the food. After that, after ingestion comes what? Digestion. So just wind up with the concept of nutrition. Some few more things to talk about before we move on to the concept of respiration. For nutrition, I must have told you that after the process of digestion is over, after the process of digestion is over, if I have to remember that this is the wall of the ileum, if I understand that this is the wall of the ileum, and where are the digested nutrients? This is the wall of the ileum to understand. Then where are the digested nutrients? And what are the digested nutrients? What is the simplest form of carbohydrates?
Glucose.
Glucose. What is the simplest form of proteins?
Amino acids.
Amino acids. What is the simplest form of fats?
Fatty acids.
Fatty acids and glycerols. So now we know that all these three different types of molecules, where are they supposed to be? They are supposed to be in the cavity of the ileum. All these digested nutrients, they are in the cavity of the ileum. So now, from the cavity of the ileum, they are supposed to enter the finger-like projections of the ileum, known as the villus or villi. So now talking about that, what is exactly happening here? I talk about one single villus. What is happening here? The simplest molecules have to pass through the wall of the villus to enter into the blood vessel. Something like this, that if I talk about the single villus, how would the blood vessels be arranged? The blood vessels are generally arranged like this. There will be the blood vessels here, a large number. If you remember, we had discussed about that. What are some of the special features of the villus? What are the special features of the villus? Number one, the wall is very thin, made up of only one single layer of epithelial cells, and it has got enormous or large supply of blood vessels. So now I am understanding where are the simplest molecules of amino acids and glucose and all these. I would say the glucose molecules are here. All of these molecules are present on the outer wall. They are all on the outer wall of the villus. All of them are on the outer wall of the villus. So now, since these molecules are all on the outer wall of the villus, so I would say, how would these molecules now start moving a process known as diffusion? So this different type of molecules that I understand, they all has to diffuse in. They will all cross the membrane, diffuse and fall into the blood vessel. These molecules will all diffuse in, cross the membrane, fall into the blood vessel, and this process of diffusion and the blood vessels or the blood getting loaded with the amino acids, the fatty acids and the glucose molecules, this is what we are talking about as absorption. Absorption is nothing but a simple process of diffusion or say passive transport, where the molecules are moving from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. Because whenever I'm comparing the blood with the outside of the villus has got a higher concentration of amino acids, fatty acids, glucose, and that's the reason the easy transport into the blood. Okay, now the blood is loaded with all these molecules. Which molecules? All the three different types of digested nutrients. And now all these molecules are getting transported by the way of the blood. They are getting transported by the way of the blood. They are all getting transported by the way of the blood to the body cells. They all will be transported to the body cells. This process of transportation of the nutrients by the way of the bloodstream, this is what is known as assimilation. What is it? Assimilation. So how do we define this word assimilation? I will summarize. Don't be in a hurry to write. Samjho pehle. So what did I say? The first step. Now if I have to summarize the entire story, I would say the first was ingestion. What was it? The process of intake of the food. The process of taking in of the food. And then starts the process of digestion in the mouth and the stomach, etc. So the second step is digestion. What are the stages of nutrition? That is what we are talking about. The second is digestion. Third is absorption. Digestion is over, now absorption. After absorption, assimilation, that is the distribution of the digested nutrients all over the body. The nutrients has to go to the cells and the tissues. And back in the large intestine, if I now have to say, back in the large intestine, what is going on? The reabsorption of the water is going on. Formation of the feces going on. So that is what is known as egestion. So what are the different stages of nutrition? The different stages of nutrition are ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation and egestion. So this is together talking about the entire concept of nutrition. Okay. Now absorption, assimilation, sometimes digestion, absorption, assimilation, you are sometimes asked also questions on this. Ingestion, very simple, the process of intake of the food which is different in different organisms. Digestion, already I think we have written down also what is the definition of digestion. What is it? Breakdown of the complex food substances into simpler forms. Absorption, what will you write? Write down absorption and assimilation. Just the definition. Absorption is the process of
the division of digestive nutrients from the small intestine towards the blood vessel, commonly known as a
correct. And assimilation, right now? Assimilation, the distribution of assimilation, the distribution of the simplest form of nutrients, distribution of simplest form of nutrients, that is distribution of simplest form of nutrients, that is glucose, amino acids, comma, fatty acids and glycerol, fatty acids and glycerol, by the bloodstream to reach the body tissues, is known as assimilation.
Ma'am, can you give the absorption definition again?
You have not written? Absorption, the diffusion of the simplest forms of nutrients, that is glucose, amino acids, fatty acids and glycerol, from the cavity of the small intestine towards the blood vessels of the villus, is known as absorption. Towards the blood vessels of the villus is known as absorption. Okay, so we are done with the concept of nutrition. The first part of the chapter is over. Doubt here? Nothing? No doubt? Ejection also, the release of the undigested waste substance. That is very simple.
Is galactose a simple form of?
But see, whenever we are writing the simplest form of carbohydrate, we generally write glucose. क्योंकि जो fructose है, galactose है, the chemical formula is the same, and ultimately they also get converted to some of the other form of, meaning the form of glucose. So what is the simplest form? If at all a question in your paper, name the simplest form of carbohydrate digestion, you are supposed to write glucose, because that is most commonly occurring, most abundantly occurring, and chemical formula galactose and fructose का same है, वही C6H12O6 है. Only the arrangement of the carbon hydrogen different. Ingestion, you have to write the release of the undigested waste substance from the large intestine. Release of the undigested waste substances from the large intestine, that is ingestion. Okay. Now, very fast, I'll give you 5 questions and 5 minutes में answer करना है. क्या हो गया? Rectum and anus are parts of the large intestine, that I showed you.
Yeah.
And their function is only the reabsorption of the water, the release of the waste substances. Only nothing extra to write down. Chalo, fast, very fast. We will write down 5 questions. Check whether you know. I'm sure nobody must have read. पढ़ के आया कोई? हाँ? झूठ की सच? सच है. You?
I was not in last.
Last class absent थे? क्यों absent?
I was not.
10th standard में हर दिन पढ़ना है, even if it is a holiday now. Holiday शुरू हो गया सबका? हाँ? 10th standard में हर दिन minimum 2 hours, 3 hours पढ़ना है, even if it is holiday. अच्छा नहीं लगा मैं सुन के. But पढ़ना है. Then you will be comfortable by September, October. You will be comfortable. Otherwise, September, October में क्या होगा? Temperature of the house, पापा मम्मी का pressure, तुम्हारा pressure, सब कुछ will be in a bursting state. होने चाहिए. You start from now. धीरे धीरे पढ़ो. थोड़ा थोड़ा करके पढ़ते रहो. And then whenever you are coming here, you should have doubts. Whenever you are coming here, अगर whatever portion we are already done, if you are not going through, you don't have doubts. And in the month of May, already I told you, in the month of May, we will speed up. So much portion आगे चला जाएगा. And if you are not reading, बस थोड़ा सा पढ़ो. And it's a go through. I'm not saying that you learn and revise for the exam. Go through. Okay, just very fast. Number 1, लिखो questions. Not to refer. Try answering on your own. See how much you are understanding. Question number 1. How is pepsinogen activated? revision questions. Number 1. How is pepsinogen activated? Keep one line for the answer. Number 2. Number 2. Name the digestive juice responsible for. Name the digestive juice responsible for emulsification of fats. Name the digestive juice responsible for emulsification of fats. Number 3. Name the digestive juice responsible for emulsification of fats. Number 3. One line for the answer. Number 3. Name the parts of the alimentary canal where fat digestion takes place. Name the parts of the alimentary canal where fat digestion takes place. Name the parts of the alimentary canal where fat digestion takes place. One line for the answer. Number 4. Number 4. How is partially digested proteins? How is partially digested proteins broken down? How is partially digested proteins broken down? With the help of pancreatic enzymes. With the help of pancreatic enzymes. Two lines for the answer. Last question. Last question. What type of food is digested in the mouth?
What type of?
Food is digested in the mouth. And why?
Completely digested.
नहीं, question क्या है? What type of food is digested in the mouth? What type of food is digested in the mouth? चलो लिखो. I will discuss all the answers. I will give you 5 minutes. फटाफट करो. Try. Not a problem. Whatever you know, you write. At least 5 में से 3 question also if you are able to answer. Very good. Try to understand. Not
I'm
just.
done all 5 questions.
अरे super. इसलिए अभी सारे के सारे correct थे. Speed up. Done now? All done?
Yes.
Done? Okay, chalo. Number 1. What did I ask you? Number 1.
How is pepsinogen activated?
How is pepsinogen activated?
Pepsinogen is activated with the help of HCl.
2. Pepsinogen is activated in the presence of hydrochloric acid to pepsin. To pepsin. Pepsin, you have to write. Mentioning pepsin is a must. You have to mention pepsin.
Ma'am, does pepsinogen get activated in acidic medium or just by itself?
In the acidic medium, and that also in the presence of hydrochloric acid, because in the stomach there is nothing else apart from hydrochloric acid. Number 2. What is number 2?
Name the digestive juice
Acha. Ah.
responsible for emulsification and lipase.
Huh?
Lipase.
Digestive juice. Necessary bile juice. Which is the digestive juice? And lipase क्यों लिखा? Lipase अगर लिखोगे भी lipase क्यों? नहीं, emulsification is not a digestive process. What was the step of emulsification?
Break down
Fats with the help of
bile salts.
bile salts. Emulsification में कोई enzyme है ही नहीं. It is bile salts, fats with the help of bile salts. So never to write lipases, no lipases are involved there. So name the digestive juice. What is the digestive juice to write? Bile juice. Your answer is bile juice. Third,
Name the parts of the alimentary canal where fat digestion takes place. Duodenum on the first part of the small intestine.
Name the part of the alimentary canal where fat digestion take place. Which part of the alimentary canal where fat digestion take place? Small intestine. Only the small intestine to write. Or
And then last.
no, in the large intestine no digestion takes place. Repeatedly I explained you this. So name the part of the alimentary canal where fat digestion takes place. Small intestine.
Is the first part is small intestine?
Then you'll have to write the duodenum and the jejunum specifically. So either you write duodenum and jejunum, or since these words are not specified in your textbook as such, I have given you this extra. So you can write small intestine. For that also you will get mark. Name the part. But if I get a question, if I give you a separate question, name the parts of the now parts. Name the parts of the alimentary canal where protein digestion takes place. Now what to write? Stomach and small intestine. Name the parts of the alimentary canal where carbohydrate digestion take place. Now what to write?
Buccal cavity and the
Small intestine. So small intestine and the mouth, or the mouth and the small intestine, not to write the stomach then. So always to remember that way. Next, number 4.
How is partially digested could be broken down with the help of
Pancreatic enzyme.
the
कौन सा step था?
duodenum
जो कौन सा enzyme का role लिखना है?
pancreatic enzyme,
Trypsin. Very good. And what was the step? Do you remember? That
the
will need enough practice, but still I asked you to check if you have gone through. वो step कौन सा था? Do you remember?
the protein with the help of trypsin breaks down into peptide.
Peptides. Huh? So the equation that I gave you was peptides and proteosis with the help of trypsin gives rise to peptides. Smaller peptides. So bigger peptides, the enzyme name is trypsin for sure. और कोई enzyme हो ही नहीं सकता. Pancreatic juice I mentioned. So that has to be pancreatic juice में protein digesting enzyme which one? Trypsin. And so you have to write down the job of trypsin there. The last one, number 5.
What type of food is digested in the mouth and why? Protein, carbohydrate, fat. No.
What type of
There are starch, vitamins, and carbohydrates.
Digested कहाँ पे? My question is, what type of food is digested in the mouth? What type of food is digested in the mouth?
Food that contains
Only carbohydrates. So vitamins and minerals, why can't we write? I told you repeatedly that time also. Vitamins and minerals are already in their simplest form. Right from the mouth, they are absorbed. We don't have any enzymes for digestion. Always remember that. So now that I'm talking about what type of food is digested in the mouth, your answer is
Food containing
carbohydrates. Rich foods are digested. So which step would you mention? Starch breaking down to maltose with the help of salivary. Why? The next part of the question is why only carbohydrate is digested?
because the
Saliva contains only one enzyme, that is a salivary amylase. Okay, so that much also if you are writing, that is more than enough. Because saliva contains only salivary amylase which can break down starch. It does not have any protein digesting enzyme. It does not have any fat digesting enzyme. So that's the reason in the mouth only carbohydrate digestion. Now that we have already understood that the process of digestion involves breakdown of the food into the simplest forms and then the absorption and then the assimilation. Now the next part of the chapter that we are going to study, respiration again starts from here. There's a continuity, remember. We are now talking about the next part of the chapter where I am saying that respiration, to understand the concept of respiration, what is respiration, how is respiration and nutrition dependent, how are they related? How are they related? Now I would start thinking of these cells which have got the simplest form of the nutrients, and especially talk about the glucose now. Especially talk about the glucose, because by the way of the blood, the glucose will be deposited in all the body cells. The amino acids and the fatty acids will majorly be deposited in the liver cells because they have got some other different functions to perform. So I would understand that what is happening in this body cell then. What is happening in this body cell when the glucose has already reached by the way of absorption, assimilation? So by the way of assimilation, the body cells have already got the glucose. And now by the process of breathing, the body cells will also get oxygen. So now I'm also talking about another process known as breathing. So by the way of breathing and gaseous exchange, this body cell will also get the oxygen. Glucose is already there. Now now oxygen and glucose, whenever they are together with the help of variety of enzymes, what will their fate be? Their fate would be breakdown to carbon dioxide and water and energy. And we are talking majorly about this concept, that is the breakdown of the food to release energy. So that is the relation. We always say that whenever we take carbohydrate food, we get energy. Whenever we are consuming carbohydrate food, we feel that as if our body is getting heated up a little bit. So what is the relation? The relation is that the carbohydrate getting digested, the glucose getting released, the glucose assimilated and entering the body cells, and the body cells, if it is able to get oxygen, then this is what is happening in the body cells, and this is what is known as respiration now. This is what is known as respiration. In all your earlier standards, you have understood respiration means taking in of oxygen, giving out of carbon dioxide. Now we have to go a little bit beyond to understand what is respiration, the breakdown of the complex food in the body cells to release carbon dioxide and energy. This is respiration actually. So what is the definition of respiration that we write? The biochemical method, write down the head, the next part of the chapter, the biochemical process in which the food is broken down. The biochemical process in which food is broken down in the body cells. The biochemical process in which food is broken down in the body cells to release carbon dioxide in the body cells. Food is broken down in the body cells to release carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Carbon dioxide, water, and energy is known as respiration.
Among one doubt, I'm just when we are respiring, only glucose gets broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy, right?
Because when we talk about, just now as I mentioned, fatty acids or amino acids, they will not inside the body cells with the help of oxygen, unka koi relation nahi hai. They will not get broken down. They have got a different method of getting broken down to urea or some other components in the liver cells. In the liver cells, unka baki ka processing hota hai, but glucose can get broken down in every body cell if oxygen is available for us. So now this is the basic concept we start with. What is respiration? The breakdown of the glucose to produce energy. The breakdown of the glucose in the presence of oxygen, and the presence and absence of oxygen, that is related, which organism we are talking about. So the process of breakdown of the glucose to release carbon dioxide, water, energy, that is the basic concept of respiration. Now that we understand the concept of respiration, now here we'll have to come across that, is it that every organism is getting adequate amount of oxygen in the cells? No, not actually. When we are talking about organisms like us, organisms like the plants, organisms like the birds and the fishes, organisms even like those insects and the cockroaches and the mosquitoes, what is common in all of us is we have got enough number of mitochondria in our cells. We have got enough number of mitochondria in our cells, and since we have got enough number of mitochondria in our cells, hence large amount of oxygen. And if we have large amount of oxygen and mitochondria, then only the process will be this. Then are there any organisms which may not have oxygen in their body cells? Yes. Nahin? Fish ke to just now I said fishes, birds, yeast, correct. So when we are talking about, there are some group of organisms, some single-celled organisms, though they are in the same environment like us, but they don't have any methods by which they take in oxygen.
Is it the same for amoeba too?
Amoeba, no. Amoeba is eukaryotic. Amoeba can take in small amount of oxygen by diffusion. But if I talk about the single cell, the various single cell organisms, I may talk about the yeast, I may talk about various different type of bacteria. Though they are right now also, if I understand, right now surrounding our body, surrounding our face, surrounding our hands, there are hundreds of bacteria in the same environment. But are these bacteria capable of taking in the oxygen? No, they are not, because they don't have any structures. But I talk about a small mosquito, it appears to be so simple, but then the body organization is quite complex. They have got pores all over their general surface, which is constantly diffusing in and taking in oxygen. But the bacteria does not, but the yeast does not have anything like this, though they are in the same environment like us. So I would talk about a fish. Does the fish take an adequate amount of oxygen inside its body cells? Yes, from the water. Oxygen is dissolved in the water also. So when we are talking about all these different group of organisms, we are now to understand the two different pathways that what would happen to the glucose which has entered the body cells. So we start this way. The glucose which has entered the body cells. How? Just now we have been talking about assimilation, absorption, assimilation. So story wahan se shuru ho raha hai. The body cells which is getting glucose after the process of absorption, assimilation, what is the fate of this glucose? This glucose will break down to a simpler compound, and this simpler compound is known as the pyruvate, also known as the pyruvic acid. Okay, the pyruvate, also known as the pyruvic acid. So when I say glucose, glucose is a 6-carbon sugar, all of you know that. And this pyruvate that I'm talking about is a 3-carbon sugar. So one molecule of glucose is actually getting broken down to 2 molecules of pyruvate. I mentioned here 3-carbon sugar hai. So definitely this 6-carbon sugar is getting broken down to 2 molecules of sugar. 2 molecules of pyruvate. What is this process known as? This process is known as glycolysis. Glyco, sugar, glucose. Lysis means what? Lysis means breakdown. Lysis means breakdown. So this process is known as glycolysis. This process is known as glycolysis. Where does this process take place? In the cytoplasm of all cells. Whether I talk about the fish, bird, bacteria, yeast, ये जो process है, this is common for all. Glycolysis is common for all. Always remember, what did I mention just now? Glycolysis is the breakdown of the glucose to pyruvate or pyruvic acid, which takes place in the cytoplasm of all cells. But now, the next part that we have to understand, that what about this pyruvate or pyruvic acid? This pyruvate or pyruvic acid will show further breakdown based on what the condition of the cell is. Cell के अंदर oxygen है, mitochondria है, नहीं है. Based on that, the further breakdown of the pyruvate will differ. So let us start understanding the 3 pathways. What are the 3 pathways? The 3 pathways of glucose breakdown. The 3 pathways of glucose breakdown we are going to understand. The first, let us start with the first pathway of glucose breakdown. This part is glycolysis. First, now after the pyruvate, the first compound formed is pyruvate. Pyruvate now further breaking down under what conditions? I talk about the first condition is if the cell has abundance of oxygen, something like us. The cell has abundance of oxygen. The cell has large number of mitochondria. The pyruvate is in a type of a cell where the cell has large number of mitochondria. और अगर mitochondria ज़्यादा है, respiratory structures well developed, so definitely the cells have a large amount of oxygen. Then what is the fate of pyruvate? Then what will happen to this pyruvate? Then this pyruvate will break down to carbon dioxide and then water and then 38 molecules of ATP. What is ATP? Triphosphate. ATP is formed in which cell organelle? Mitochondria. That's the reason we are writing mitochondria. So where is this process taking place? This process is taking place in the mitochondria. So I am saying that this pyruvate getting broken down in the mitochondria to carbon dioxide, water and 38 ATP. What is this process known as? This process is known as the Krebs cycle. What is it? Krebs, after the name of the biologist. Krebs cycle. Sirf naam hi yaad rakhna hai. No steps, reaction, nothing to study right now. So pyruvate getting broken down in the presence, abundance of oxygen. If the cells have abundance of oxygen, then the products are carbon dioxide, water and so much of energy for one molecule of glucose only. What is this process of breakdown or what is this mode of respiration known as? This is known as aerobic respiration. And what are those organisms known as? The organisms are known as aerobes. Aerobes or aerobic respiration. This is known as aerobic respiration. What is the meaning of aerobic respiration? Breakdown of the glucose in the presence of oxygen to release carbon dioxide, water, and 38 molecules of ATP. So what is a must to mention in your answer? Must to mention in your answer are these things. Breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen to give rise to carbon dioxide, water, and 38 molecules of ATP. Yeah. So I'm saying that which are some examples of aerobes or aerobic organisms? Which are some examples I can write? I can write examples of human. I can write examples of certain birds. I can write examples of some insects. I can write examples of some fishes. So many smaller organisms also, so many some single cell organisms also, they can take in oxygen by the process of diffusion. And yes, they can also be aerobic organisms. So this is one. Let us talk about just the opposite. Just the opposite, that is the third pathway. I'll talk about the second later. Give space, all of you. I talk about the third, that is just the contrast. Just the contrast is abundance of oxygen, and now I talk about complete absence of oxygen. Complete absence of oxygen. What type of organisms I can think of? Organisms like the bacteria. Organisms like the bacteria, organisms like the yeast, organisms like the those PPLOs, very simple. They don't have any methods by which they can take in oxygen. Okay, mycoplasmas and all, very simple organisms. So these organisms, they cannot take in oxygen from the environment at all. So what will be the fate of pyruvate? What will be the fate of the glucose in their body? Yes, glucose will definitely break down to pyruvate, but after that, this pyruvate will break down to ethanol or ethyl alcohol. That would be the prominent product in them, ethyl alcohol or ethanol, and then small amount of water and a very, very small amount of energy, that is 2 molecules of ATP. So if the cells do not have oxygen, that means, does these cells have mitochondria? No, they don't have mitochondria. That's the reason. No mitochondria, no respiratory organs. That's the reason, absence of oxygen. Since absence of oxygen, how is that pyruvate getting broken down? Ethanol, water, and 2 molecules of ATP. Now, since alcohol is formed as a major product, this process is also known as alcoholic fermentation. This process is also known as alcoholic fermentation. वैसे तो this process is also known as anaerobic respiration. So right now we are talking about 2 different methods of respiration. Aerobic respiration, if the glucose is breaking down in the presence of oxygen. If the glucose is breaking down in the presence of oxygen, the energy release you compared so much for 1 molecule of glucose. If the glucose is breaking down in the absence of oxygen, energy release for that same 1 molecule of glucose is so less. But yes, the bacteria and the yeast can manage because they don't have so much of muscular activity, locomotion, nothing. They can manage with the 2 molecules of ATP. Right now that you are writing, right now that I am talking, abhi process where so much of energy is getting lost. So the energy demand for us in our body is so much. So these are the contrasts. We are talking about 2 major processes of respiration. What are the 2 different modes? Aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Difference is what? Glucose breakdown in presence of oxygen, glucose breakdown in absence of oxygen. What are the primary products you'll have to remember? What are the products you'll have to remember? The examples you'll have to remember. But now let us talk here.
All prokaryotic cells anaerobic respiration.
All. So now that I talk about this, now say suppose for us, say suppose for a complex organism like human, is it possible that at times we go through, at times we actually don't show anaerobic respiration and partially we show anaerobic processes? Is it possible? What do you think? Is it possible? At times, we are not actually of this particular category. At times, the amount of oxygen in our body cells is so less, and at times, if the oxygen content in our body cell is less, then the glucose will definitely not break down by this method. Then the glucose takes a different method for breakdown, but definitely not this. There's a separate method in which I would say sometimes if there is a deficiency or a lack of oxygen, and this is applicable for what type of organisms? It is applicable for us. It is applicable for the birds. It is applicable for organisms which show vigorous muscular activity. So definitely, example also I will write skeletal muscles for human, a very good example to write. Skeletal muscles of human. Now, what is the concept that we are going to understand here is, whenever we show vigorous muscular activity, our muscle cells always run short of oxygen. Now that you are writing, now that I am speaking, are we running short of oxygen? Are you having pain in your hands right now? I don't believe that much. Now that I am talking, no, nothing much. But if you are running, if you are writing continuously, doesn't your muscles of the hand ache? Whenever we are running for long distances, or if I'm walking, hurry, yes, the leg muscle starts aching. If that continues, we may suffer from muscular cramps. Why does that happen? Because at times when the vigorous muscular activity happens in our body, the muscle cells start suffering from deficiency of oxygen because the contraction is much faster as compared to a rate of breathing. Now, why we are not having any problem? Because whatever is the rate of our muscle contraction and whatever is the rate of our breathing is more or less at par. So, इसीलिए कोई problem नहीं हो रहा है. But if the muscle contraction is much faster than the rate of breathing, then only this type of situation may happen. So, at this time, what happens when there is a deficiency of oxygen building up in the muscle cells? Then this will not be the products. These are not the products. Then what are the products? The products are lactic acid. Lactic acid and 2 molecules of water and 2 molecules of ATP. Again, check, we are talking about just a small amount of ATP released. So definitely you must have come across that whenever you are running, whenever you are working very fast, did you ever observe that your breathing rate starts increasing?
Yes, ma'am.
Why does the breathing rate start increasing?
To supply enough oxygen.
More oxygen, because the muscles are contracting faster. Muscles are on the verge of becoming deficient with oxygen. So the breathing rate also speeds up to supply more oxygen. और ये अगर process नहीं हो पाया, then the muscle starts aching. Or we may suffer from cramps or twitches or fatigue.
So this is why like our heart beats faster when we are exercising, right? So,
When we are exercising, our breathing rate also, because the heart is also contracting much faster. वो जैसे ही होगा, whenever the muscles in our body will contract at a faster rate, our breathing rate will normally speed up to supply more oxygen to the muscle cells. Okay. So what are the products now? When this is a temporary situation, so now say suppose you are running very fast to win a race. At that time, possible that your muscle cells are aching and you suffer from a cramp. So at that time, why did you suffer from a cramp? Because lactic acid accumulation has happened in your muscles so much. Because the breathing rate could not supply that much of oxygen what was needed. So the contraction is faster than the rate of breathing, and that's the reason why lactic acid has accumulated. In this situation, we may suffer from muscular cramps or a condition known as muscle fatigue. If not muscular cramps, but definitely muscle ache and exhaust, we feel exhausted, we feel tired. हमेशा जरूरी नहीं है कि cramps होगा ही होगा, but muscle pain and muscle twitches and tiredness and exhaustion definite. That is definite. So when we are talking about that this particular pathway is a temporary pathway, but these two, the first and the third step that I talk about, is a standard step for aerobic organisms and anaerobic organisms. Then what are the two methods that you have learned so far? Aerobic respiration matlab breakdown of the glucose in the presence of oxygen. What is the amount of the energy release? 38 molecules. In what type of organism it takes place? So these are the three major points that you have to always write down. Make a table, form a table, aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and major three differences to write based on the energy, based on the organism, and the basic pathway. This entire flow chart you get in your paper as a 2-mark question. Explain the processes or explain the pathways of glucose breakdown. This is the question where you have to write and explain this. Explain the pathways of glucose breakdown. This is there in your textbook also. The same flow chart is there in your textbook also. Explain the process of glucose breakdown, and this is the pathway that you have to explain under 3 different conditions. Now let us differentiate only this two. Differentiate aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Make a table. You will write down the points. I will only give you the point on which to write. The first point you write down.
Ma'am, what does the body, when there's vigorous motion of muscles and lactic acid buildup takes place, what does the body do to like counteract that?
Nay, when there's a muscle ache, then what are we doing? We are resting. Now that you take a rest for 3 minutes also, तुम्हारा muscle contraction slow down हो गया, and now the oxygen is again replenished back. The oxygen is again supplied back into the muscle cells, and again this process will get back to this process.
But there's some lactic acid that builds up in the muscles.
This lactic acid is now again getting converted to carbon dioxide, water, and this. So that's why repeatedly I'm saying this is a temporary process. Whenever we are running, jogging, or vigorous muscular activity and we suffer from muscular pain, when we take 2 minutes of rest, do we feel energized again? Yes, because this lactic acid now starts getting broken down and follows this pathway. So lactic acid is accumulated in our muscle cells only for a short time. Only for a short time. So this will again get converted into this carbon dioxide, water, and 38 molecules of ATP.
Also take a hot shower to remove the lactic acid, right?
So in that case, what's happening when we are talking about why do we take a hot shower? Why do we feel relaxed when we are taking hot showers? What will happen? The muscles are relaxed. The muscles relax, and the oxygen supply by the way of the blood vessels is much faster. By the way of the blood vessel, oxygen supply will be much faster. So ultimately, the oxygen has to reach our body cells to bring about aerobic pathway. Write down. Now the table that you make is the first point aerobic. Under aerobic you will write down breakdown of glucose in presence or absence of oxygen. That you write down. The first point for aerobic, breakdown of glucose takes place in the presence of oxygen. So that way you should write. Breakdown of oxygen takes place in the presence of oxygen. So anaerobic, what will you write? खाली absence of oxygen नहीं लिखना है. Breakdown of glucose. Breakdown of glucose takes place in the absence of oxygen. Breakdown of glucose takes place in the absence of oxygen. So that is the first point to write, the first difference. Second you will write on the products. What are the products? Check from the flow chart and write. For aerobic, what are the products? Carbon dioxide, water, and 38 molecules of ATP. So based on the products, you should know. Sometimes in your question paper, they will give you differentiate based on the energy release. So only energy likhna hai, 38 and 2. So now you write down the products. And third point, write down on 2 organisms. Examples. Examples of organisms showing the method. Third difference you write down on examples. Organisms that show this method. Organisms that show this method. So organism, write any 2 organisms showing aerobic, write any 2 organisms showing anaerobic. Okay? Done? Now see there, we are talking about alcoholic fermentation. A little bit more on this, you should know. What is alcoholic fermentation? Alcoholic fermentation is the process in which the glucose is getting broken down in the absence of oxygen. And ethyl alcohol is the prominent product. So alcoholic fermentation is a process commonly occurring in our own homes also. Alcoholic fermentation is a process. It is a process of great industrial importance when we are talking about in the process of making of the in the making of the different type of in the brewing industry. If I talk about in the cake making, pastry making industries, in the bakeries, this is a process. It is also happening in our own homes. Can you tell me how? Where? Alcoholic fermentation in the making of the
idli,
dosa batter, dosa, idli, in the making of all the different, the bread and the bun, the cakes also quite a number of, we put them in the yeast and wait for another half an hour to leavening. So when we are talking about these breweries making in the different type of drinks that we understand in the wine and the rum and the vodka, etc., all these involve this particular method where some of the other carbohydrate containing food is allowed to get fermented, and in that process alcohol is released. Some of the other form of alcohol is released. So that's the reason this process is known as alcoholic fermentation. So what is meant by alcoholic fermentation? You have to write this: the process in which the glucose in certain foodstuffs get broken down to this products. And alcohol, ethyl alcohol is a prominent product there. That's the reason the alcoholic fermentation. Sometimes you also get questions, why is anaerobic respiration also known as alcoholic fermentation? Let us take this question. Why is anaerobic respiration also known as alcoholic fermentation? See, a particular question can be framed in so many different ways. You should know the concept, so you try to put it properly against that question. Why is anaerobic respiration known as alcoholic fermentation? Answer. The breakdown of glucose in the absence of oxygen. Breakdown of glucose in the absence of oxygen involving bacterial and yeast cells. Involving bacterial and yeast cells is of great economic importance, in breweries, bread and pastry making, comma, in the batter of fermented foods like idli, dosa, etc. Fermented food like idli, dosa, etc. Where ethyl alcohol is a major compound released after glucose breakdown. Major compound released after glucose breakdown. Here you don't have to emphasize anything on the energy. Here we are not talking about energy much. Here we are emphasizing mostly on the alcohol part. Why alcoholic fermentation? Okay. The next class will start with the respiratory system and the process of respiration. This is the basic anaerobic aerobic process. Nobody
हाँ देखा है चला
as maths and biology.
Great question. That's a happy question.
Which is certainly it. Biology question.
This chapter is also reality to the start with blank. We were absorption. Absorption. No experiments. ये वापस बाहर जाने वाला दो बीच में क्या होता नाइट में मॉर्निंग लेक्चर्स में आया
कौन से
मॉर्निंग लेक्चर्स मतलब एक दो बार मॉर्निंग लेक्चर्स लगे थे फिजिक्स
हाँ
किसने लगाया था
अभी इस साल भी लगाने नहीं मिल रहा फिजिक्स एंड मैथ्स
जो पहला करा था तो छठा वो सुबह अपनी खराब करके वो संडे के दिन जो आए हैं ना
कभी फिजिक्स पढ़ने के लिए मैथ्स
दोपहर को बुलाना चलेगा सुबह सुबह इतना मत
इस साल ले लो
मैं तो 8 बजे उठती हूँ अगर छुट्टी रहा तो सोचती हूँ तो जल्दी
अक्सर 34 ये वीडियो साथ